Alright everybody, it's time for my February wrap-up video, and for those of you who remember, my sister and I swapped reading lists, the list swap tag, and we were going to see how many of the books we suggested to each other we could actually get through. She gave me 7. I read 3 of them. Obviously we can say I didn't read as many books as I wanted to this month, but then again that's not really that big of a surprise because I haven't been reading as much and it's taking me a while to get back into the groove. And if it makes you feel any better, she didn't read all the books I gave her either. So what I'm going to do is keep this list on hand and just pick up one of these books every once in a while and keep reading through the list. I have Waterkeep by Scott J. Savage right now that I'm going to start any day, I promise. I read Constable and Toop by Gareth P. Jones. This was an excellent book. I was actually surprised by how much I loved this book because it is about ghosts, and I don't always enjoy stories about ghosts, but it was very much a fun ghost story, not necessarily creepy or a horror story. It did have action, it did have, like, bad things going on, so it was a good story, it just wasn't scary. This book got 5 stars. That is how much I loved it. The Secret Zoo by Bryan. This book was one of the ones my sister recommended for me in our list swap, and I enjoyed the concept. It was a very fun concept. I had issues with the writing style, and I had issues with some of the character depth and development, so this book only got 3 stars, but it was a fun book. It would be a great book for kids to read. A Funny Thing Happened on My Way to the Future by Michael J. Fox. It's kind of like a life lessons learned book for younger people, like who are just graduating college or high school, who don't quite know what to make out of life, and Michael J. Fox just kind of goes through and says, you know what, these are things that you're going to need to know in your life, no matter what you decide to do with your life, how you decide to be educated, or how you decide to work and get a career for your life. These are just some basic need-to-know things that it would be better to learn now than not know them and learn them the hard way like I did. So it was both entertaining and informative, and it kept me reading, and it's only like 100 pages long, so it's a really good book, and it's a really good length, and I just read it really fast. I read this probably in a day. So this book, I believe, got 4 stars, and it's a really interesting one for anybody who wants to read it. This is also the first non-fiction book I have finished this year of my goal of 10, so I'm very proud of myself. Once Upon a Marigold by Ferris. This is another book that is from the list swap that my sister and I are doing. This book was originally recommended to us by my grandmother, who, because she now has a Nook, is reading more than I ever knew that she ever read in her life. So that is totally awesome. I love the Nook for that. Anyway, this was a really cute story. Again, I had some issues with writing style and character depth and development, as well as plot predictability, so my sister is now incredibly frustrated with me for not totally loving the books that she's recommended, but yeah, that happens, I guess. So this book also got 3 stars. But it was a really cute read, and I did write a review on Goodreads about that if you want to know a little more about why and how I rated it 3 stars. I also listened to Nims Island by Wendy. I had seen the movie years ago and I loved it, and the book was really good. I think I did like the movie better just because of the way that they did it, but maybe someday I'll do a book-to-movie comparison about how and why. All you need to know is that it got 3 stars, and the narrator was really fun, and it was a really short book. It was only 2 discs long, and it was a really fun read. I also finished The Golem's Eye, book 2 of the Bartimaeus trilogy by Jonathon Stroud, also an audiobook narrated by Simon Jones, who is such a wonderful book narrator. And that one got 4 stars, and if you have any interest in reading the Bartimaeus trilogy, I did write a review on the first and second audiobooks in that series, and I really love how Stroud has done the character development of especially Nathaniel, one of the main characters, through the story. I'm listening to the 3rd book right now. Hopefully I might even have it done by the end of the month, but I really love his character arc, not necessarily in the individual books, but in the overall trilogy so far. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how Stroud ties that all up and what he decides to do with the fate of Nathaniel. From my sister's list, I also read The Strictest School in the World, being the tale of a clever girl, a rubber boy, and a collection of flying machines. Mostly Broken. This is the first book in the Mad Misadventures of Emmeline and Rubberbones by Howard Whitehouse, and I give this book 4 stars. I have not done a video review of this. I haven't even done a Goodreads review of this, but it got 4 stars, and I really liked it, and it was incredibly entertaining. It reminded me a lot of the Larklight series by Philip Reeve, only not sci-fi or steampunk. It had the same feel, it had the same kind of quirky narration vibe that I really loved, so it's a really good, fun story. Victorian England, flying machine, a boy who cannot break no matter how hard you hit him or push him off a cliff to the ground 30 feet below. How can you get better than that? Well, actually it does, but that would be a spoiler, so I'm not going to tell you. In addition, I also read a couple of Fullmetal Alchemists because this is a really good series and I'm working my way through it. I probably mentioned already, but I am also listening to Ptolemy's Gate, Book 3 of the Bartimaeus trilogy by Jonathon Stroud, which I am totally loving. I love the character development that Stroud is putting his characters through, specifically the main character, one of the 3 main characters, Nathaniel. I have been looking forward to seeing how Stroud is going to tie up this whole character arc for these 3 characters and how they're going to finally interact and the conclusion of the story, and I am loving it. So, in total, that makes 1 book from my overall yearly goal. I set myself so many goals of how many different kinds of books I want to read, like 25 adult fiction and 10 nonfiction. I should totally be keeping a list. Ta-da! I knew this Stormtrooper marker board would come in handy for something, so I have read 1 nonfiction book of the 10 that I want to read, and these are the rest of my reading goals for the year, in case you didn't get that from 2014 reading goals. Let's talk book haul. I made another trip to DI this year, and I found Tom Sawyer Abroad and Tom Sawyer Detective by Mark Twain. This is a book that I had heard about, and apparently it's really obscure because I've kind of been looking around for it in my library, and I couldn't find any paper copies of it, and since I'm not a huge ebook reader, that was inconvenient. But I found this at DI, and it's a little banged up. We're gonna call that well-loved, but I got it for like $1, so yay. That, and I found Half Magic. This is actually a first edition, so it's really awesome. It's really banged up because it was an old library book, which was actually a library book from my library where I work, which was totally awesome. So this is pretty banged up, but this is such a wonderful book, Half Magic by Edward Eager. Such a great, fun, cute series, a very classic children's fantasy along the lines of E. Nesbit's stuff, or the really great Wang Doodles by Julie Andrew Edwards. So those were the only 2 books that I got this year. I was going to go for a huge Amazon book haul, but I didn't for some reason. I think I spent all my money on Febuary t-shirts. While we're here, I might as well give you guys a writing update, because I was going to do this like a weekly writing update, but then I wasn't doing any writing, and I was totally embarrassed to admit that. So this month I did actually manage to accomplish something, and that was to finish writing a chapter, a ridiculously long, I'm serious, the longest chapter of my life, for a group fanfiction project that I'm working on. It's fun, and I'm working on it with a group of friends, and it's just a really interesting and great experience. So I finished that chapter, finally. It was about 25,000 words long. That's 68 pages if you don't speak word count. So yeah, you can understand why that took me a really long time to write. So now that that's finished, I just found out that the Writers of the Future deadline is March 30th, so I am trying to finish a short story. The story that I'm going to adapt for this contest started out as a short story, which I turned into an unsuccessful NaNoWriMo novella, which I'm going to adapt back into a short story. It's called Glass and Cinders, so that'll be fun. Hope your guys' February went well and you read all the books you wanted to read, or at the very least you have them moving on to the list of more books that you want to read. And I'm starting not to make sense anymore, so I'm going to leave now. Bye! It's kind of like a life lessons learned books. It's kind of like a life lessons